When you talk about any complicated procedures, whether heart surgery or urban planning, there's always going to be so much noise and the options you are going to have available in the market. And ERP implementations are not any different. So we are going to discuss all of different implementation types. So let's dive in. Hello everyone, my name is Sam Gupta and I am principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. We help our clients when they undertake any enterprise digital transformation initiatives with change management, with the strategy, and helping them go live successfully. So now let's go back to today's topic, which is going to be top 10 ERP implementation types in 2023. So the number one on our list is the change focused phased business transformation. And these are the transformation engagements where we are looking at this massive change, and typically the enterprise implementations are going to be very different, are going to be very cross-functional in nature. They are going to impact every single function in your organizations. So even the change planning is going to be very different for these initiatives. So change focused phased business transformation start from the business strategy plan, and then you are going to have the annual operating plan, the way you are going to be planning for your facility warehouse. The digital capacity planning work in the similar fashion, because you still have to estimate the number of transactions. You have to estimate your operational capacity that you are trying to automate from your digital technologies. Now the pros of this is going to be complete alignment of the corporate strategy with digital execution, because the digital teams are going to be completely aligned in terms of what you are trying to do. You are also going to be aligned in terms of what is possible financially, and if that is going to be okay on your financial statements, then the other pros are going to be definition of success. That is super critical in communicating the change to everybody in the organization, why you are trying to do. And let's say if they might have goal of growing sales by 20%, if the plan is not really aligned with their own personal or departmental goals, then they are not going to be motivated with these transformation initiatives. So that's why the pro of the change focused business transformation engagements is going to be defining the success. Now the teams are going to be super motivated just because they are going to have the end-to-end visibility. So what are some of the cons of the change focused based business transformation? So here might be harder for larger organizations to build the future financial models. The other con for this is going to be this is slightly more expensive, especially in the discovery phase. The discovery phase is going to be far longer. Typically for these types of implementations, the discovery phase is going to be roughly a year or two, just because of the time it takes to do all of that. But your implementation is going to be far shorter because you are doing a lot more work in the selection phase or in the pre-implementation phase. So your overall time, overall cost is probably going to be similar, but you are saving a lot of trouble, you are saving a lot of surprises, you are saving the business disruptions. For some of the executive, the con could be that the effort required in doing the discovery phase, and sometimes that might not even go to the implementation and they might not get the short-term results. So sometimes it might be harder for them to conceive the idea of why we are investing a year or two just in the discovery phase. But if you want to do it in the right manner, this is probably going to have the least amount of surprises as well as the disruptions and highest chances of being successful with your business transformation initiatives. So that's number one. Now, number two on our list is phased business transformation. The only difference between number one and number two is that it does not incorporate the formal change management plan as part of business transformation. The starting point for the phased business transformation is still going to be the business strategy plan, the annual operating plan, but you are not investing as much time in designing those as in to be workflows, understanding the impact of the change process on organization wide processes. So this is very business driven, where you are going to have certain challenges in your business, and that is the starting point for the business transformation initiative. So the pros for this is going to be the time saved with the change management workflows. The definition of success is still going to be there because you are still starting from your business strategy as well as annual operating plan, and then you are going to have clear visibility into KPIs, just like the first one. The cons for this is going to be the adoption risk. And even if you did everything right, the users might not enter the data in the fashion that you want, or they might not understand how they are going to be using, or there might be surprises going after go live that you didn't expect something that was going to be there as part of your customer communication process and they didn't follow the instruction. And because of that, now you are seeing a lot of disruptions in your processes. So you are going to have a lot of those risks if you don't incorporate the change management as part of your implementation plan. The implementation time is going to be longer, the selection time may be shorter. And the reason why implementation time is going to be longer is because you might be investing a lot more with the iterations, just because you did not invite the users from day one. Now, once you are going to build a model, they might not like it, they might not appreciate it. And because of that, you need to do a lot of cycles. And typically, if you are going to be late in your cycle, meaning the same task that you are doing in the implementation phase are going to be far costlier in terms of time as well as from the resources perspective than doing it in the pre-selection in the discovery phase. The more work that you are going to do in your discovery phase is going to be far cheaper in general. The same issue, cost involved with the discovery phase might demotivate some of the executives who might be hoping for the short-term results. So that's the con. So that's number 2. Now, number 3 is going to be just business transformation. So this is not necessarily the phased business transformation. The difference between number 3 and number 2 is going to be this is slightly more ad hoc in nature. This is trying to solve a very specific business problem as opposed to solving it more in the sequential manner, analyzing the business case of each of these initiatives, prioritizing them accordingly. Here, you are simply taking this as a business problem. The challenge with the business transformation is going to be is that if you look at the organization, you might be doing a lot of different business transformation and they all might be trying to solve the same problems. So you are going to get a lot more duplication overall in the organization, overall from the capability perspective, overlap perspective. Then you are going to get a lot more data quality issues. Your integration, the communication is not going to be seamless. There's going to be a lot of conflict between the departments. So that is what is the implication of not doing this in more of the phased as well as from the strategy perspective. So the starting point for this is still the same as your phased. It's just that it is not going to be as comprehensive as your phased business transformation or change focused business transformation. Now, the pros is going to be the time saved with the change management workflows. You are not investing as much time even in the comprehensive analysis of your business plan as well as the annual operating plan. So you might save some time there. Definition of success is still going to be there, but the success might not be aligned with the corporate strategy because you are trying to solve a very specific problem that may not be aligned with the corporate strategy and visibility into KPIs. The cons is going to be questionable success. Even if you are successful, your executives might not like it because that may not translate into business results. The adoption risks are going to be there because you are not combining this with the change management aspect just because you are trying to reduce some time there. The longer implementation time, because again, you are going to get a lot of surprises. The corporate strategy might be implemented in the implementation phase once they realize that this is probably not going to work for business. So you might have several cycles of the implementation in the implementation phase. And if you have selected, let's say, the wrong tool, it might be even longer. So that's why if you do it in the selection or the discovery phase, you can save a lot of trouble. So in this particular case, your implementation is going to be far longer. You might expect a lot more disruptions even in the post-go live phase, but your selection phase or the discovery phase is probably going to be shorter. So that's number 3. Now, number 4 on our list is the process and data re-engineering implementation. So some companies, they don't necessarily start at the business transformation level. They are going to focus primarily on the process and data re-engineering aspect of the problem. So in this particular case, the biggest challenge you are going to get is you have the assumed to be state. You don't sort of know what is a real to be state because that is not aligned with your overarching corporate strategy. You have not really designed your financial model to really know what you can do from the to be perspective. So you are going to make a lot of assumptions, and those assumptions may fire back because once you actually coded everything in your ERP and then you sort of figure out, no, this is not going to work for us because now there are changes in the corporate strategy. So the more you are going to document, the more you will be able to accommodate all of those scenarios in the model, and the easier it is going to be to incorporate any changes, any future changes. So now here with the process and data re-engineering plan, you are still investing significant time overall in the re-engineering your processes as well as data codings, because the data codings are going to be very different in the newer system, and you need to make sure that it is going to be aligned with the new system. Otherwise that is going to drive the over engineering, over customization of the processes, and that may have challenges with your adoption. So now the cons for this particular one is going to be the questionable success. So even though you might be successful, since it is not really aligned with the corporate strategy, you might have very similar issues as your business transformation. Now, the other issues that you're going to get is the longer implementation time due to the iteration required in aligning with the corporate strategy. Very similar issue as your business transformation. There, the issues are not going to be as much because you are at least doing some analysis from the business transformation perspective. In this particular case, it's going to be far more because you have not done any analysis from the financial perspective to understand what is your to be state. So that's number 4. Now, number 5 implementation type on our list is going to be enterprise architecture implementation. And typically, when you look at these implementation types, they are probably going to be driven by your IT, they are going to be driven by your CIO, because they are worried about most of the technical issues. And that is going to be your master data management, reconciliation, data migration. So all of that is going to be taken care of in these particular initiatives, but they might miss the process re-engineering, the data re-engineering aspect of the problem. They might miss the change management aspect or the business transformation aspect, just because in these implementation types, they might not have access to the business resources and they are not necessarily driving the implementation. Pros for these implementations is going to be the data silos are not going to be an issue. You are not going to have as much duplications of the code and capabilities across the enterprise because you are at least looking at this from the technical perspective. But the cons are going to be questionable success. So even if the technical teams are able to solve this problem technically, the business might not accept it. And that's where the business transformation engagements are going to be slightly superior. In this particular case, your total selection time is going to be shorter. The IT and CIO, they might hire an independent ERP consultant just to do the ERP selection, but they have not aligned this more from the corporate strategy perspective. So even if they are successful, the business might not accept that as a success. The assumed to be state might result into implementation failure because you are assuming something that you don't know whether the business is going to be in the same state. You did not get the agreement from them. Users did not see in the documented workflows. So it becomes very hard, and sometimes that does result in the implementation failure. The longer implementation time due to the assumed to be state, once you have configured, developed, modeled, then you are going to show to your business. Business is going to say, hey, you know what? This is not going to work for us. So now you go back to the drawing board and you are going to do everything that you would have done in your discovery phase. So that is the cycle that you are going to take. So your implementation is probably going to be far longer. You might be able to reduce time during your discovery as well as selection phase. But that's number 5. Now, number 6 on our list is the ERP implementation, and these are probably the most common ones, and these are the cross-functional integration type of ERP implementation. These are typically led by either CFOs or controllers. They might hire an ERP selection consulting firm just to select the ERP, but most of these consulting firms may have just the functional knowledge of the ERP. They might select an ERP based on their functional understanding. Now, some of the common things that we see during these implementations is that the selection firm is probably not going to be involved during the implementation. That also is going to have issue because, whatever the selection firm is going to do, if the implementation team does not agree or understand, then you are going to have issues again. So that's why involving the change management firm or the selection consulting firm that you have hired throughout the process, so that they can at least communicate what they were thinking. And if the technical team is not going to have agreement with the plan, then obviously they are going to have some sort of alternative plan. You can put everything on the table and you can agree, disagree, but not having them is probably going to be a big no, because then the technical team is not going to have as much perspective in terms of what has been done in the selection phase. And typically these implementations suffer from those challenges. Now, the pros for this particular implementation is going to be, it's probably going to be cheaper, or the perception of it being cheaper, because you are going to get a lot more issues in the post implementation phase or during the implementation phase that you have not accounted for, but on the surface they might appear cheaper. It might be faster implementation, great for teams where they might not have control over the corporate strategy or enterprise IT. Sometimes you are limited. I mean, if the other teams are not willing to cooperate with you, then you are not going to have much of a choice. Then you have to take this as more of the siloed initiative. Yes, you are going to get a lot of reconciliation issues. Yes, you are going to get a lot of integration issues, but that is the choice that you are making just because that's how your organization is structured. So the cons is going to be significant integration risks, because you have not looked at it more from the enterprise architecture perspective, how each of the systems are going to communicate with each other. Sure, you might have really vague assumptions that as long as they have APIs, you should be able to communicate, but what is the cost of that integration? How many different workflows do you need to design to enable that integration? What is going to be that reconciliation path? So the more, and that you have to do anyways during the implementation if you want the integration to work. So you are anyways investing that money, but if you invested in the selection phase, then your implementation could be far smoother, far faster. So significant integration risk, increased admin efforts due to the disconnected ledgers and the master data. If you are going to have issues with master data as well as disconnect ledgers, then you are going to have far more admin effort. So you are not really getting the value from your ERP initiative. And then missing tech perspective, they are going to design things from their perspective. They don't really have the comprehensive overview of where you are trying to go to from the organization perspective. So there are going to be a lot of issues just because of that misalignment. So that's number 6. Now, number 7 on our list is ERP implementation functional best of breed. Now, a lot of people are going to call this as the ERP implementation, but this is not really an ERP implementation, because these are the functional siloed apps installed by a specific department. The example of this could be e-commerce apps, HCM apps, WMS, TMS, P2P. All of these apps are designed to work more in the siloed fashion. Sure, the way they are going to define the integration, they are going to say, hey, I can integrate, but how tight is that integration? What is going to be the cost of reconciliation is where the real conversation is, whether the integration is going to work for you or not. So in this particular case, this is not an ERP implementation, but you are going to hear in the community, and a lot of people are going to say that this is the ERP implementation. Typically, it is led by line of business or departments, and they are probably not going to have any selection consulting firm involved. They are not going to worry about the integration just because, the budget may be in their control. So they are not really going through the corporate IT or corporate to get approval on these things. But the pros of these are going to be, they are going to be cheaper, faster, in meeting your departmental goals. So if there is a conflict between your departmental goals and the corporate goals, and if you are trying to rush and corporate is not really listening to you, then you don't have a choice. Then, this is probably the implementation that you can take. Great for teams with no control over other teams. Sometimes there is going to be a power struggle between the teams. So if you don't have that control, then you don't have a choice. So that is a pro. Now, the cons of this particular approach is going to be significant reconciliation and master data governance risk. So even though you might be successful as the department, as the function with the tool, it's going to be a nightmare for the downstream teams, for the finance teams who are going to be reconciling all of this data from these disconnected ledgers. So that's the con. Then the increased admin efforts due to disconnected ledgers. Sometimes the admin effort, the SGN is going to be so much that, whatever you are going to invest in your implementation and selection, that's just peanuts, because you have actually increased the admin effort for your operations. So even if you had invested in technology in the hope that you are going to get some automation, but now the amount of effort is increased because of these disconnected ledgers. Now, the missing cross-functional perspective might lead to selection and implementation issues. And that's a big challenge with these functional best of breed. And that's why getting that comprehensive enterprise architecture perspective is super critical. So that's number 7 implementation type on our list. Now, number 8 on our list is going to be the handoff ERP implementation. Sometimes that is also called checklist and data upload type of implementation. And a lot of companies call this as an implementation, but it's really a setup. Okay, and it's promoted by your resellers or OEMs, and they are typically not going to be responsible for the data translation, data coding. Data coding is going to be your responsibility. The assumption with this implementation type is you already understand how you want your data to be set up, and you are going to be making the decision. But typically, you are not going to have as much depth with implementation. You are not going to have as much understanding of how different ERP data models work and what are going to be the implications. So you are not necessarily expert at making these decisions. So that's where the disconnect is. The OEMs and resellers are going to say, hey, we can do whatever your requirements are, but you don't even understand what your requirements are going to be, more from the data side perspective and what you are trying to accomplish. So there is a big disconnect, and you are not going to get business results because you are setting up something that you don't understand just yet. Once you use the system for long time, then you might be able to figure out the best practices of the data coding. But for the most part, the data codings is your responsibility, and that is going to drive whether you are going to get results from your ERP implementation or not. Now, the process in this particular case is going to start with filling out a bunch of checklist as well as a spreadsheet for uploading different data. But the filling the spreadsheet is going to be your responsibility. They might be able to explain how the tool is going to behave, how the implications are going to be. But typically, since they have not spent as much time with your business in modeling your processes, in modeling your data, so they might not make an informed decision for you as well. When you bought a system, you felt that the implementation does not require as much time, but they are not spending as much time in your business. So there is a huge disconnect overall in terms of how this is going to go overall from the implementation perspective. The pros is going to be cheaper implementation, at least the perception of it being cheaper. The overall cost, if you look at the overall cost of the implementation, especially if you account for the disruptions that you are going to get post implementation, then it might not be as inexpensive as you thought to begin with. It might be faster just because you are not investing as much time in the discovery. Ideal for companies with deep internal COE and data coding experience. If you have done ERP implementation 10 times, 15 times, 100 times, then you probably will understand the ERP data modeling and how you need to model your SKUs, your BOMs, your chart of accounts, your price, discount, how this coding is going to work, and how these flows are going to go across the system. Then you will be informed in making these decisions. If you have not done that, then you probably should hire experts to do that. The cons is going to be significant integration risks, the data translation risk, the implementation failure due to inadequate process and data re-engineering. Because in these implementation, the assumption is that they are going to model the process the way you want. Okay, they will do it, but if it works or not, that's your responsibility. So you might be doing a lot of cycles during the implementation, and that's why the implementation is going to be far longer. The selection may be shorter, but the implementation is going to be far longer depending upon, and sometimes you might get far more issues post implementation. So even if your implementation is shorter, selection is shorter, but you are going to be spending a lot in post implementation. So that's number 8 implementation type. Now, number 9 on our list is the templated ERP implementation. And templated ERP implementations are promoted by a lot of companies, ERP resellers, OEMs, and they are going to feel that, you know what, when you are going for cloud ERP, I have designed this templated. And a template is almost like a theme, and theme is going to have the pre-configured set of instructions. With ERP, it's very different the way ERP systems work. You might be able to, let's say, if you go for web development or Shopify, if you go for a theme, you can still live with that. But even with that, you are going to run out of options, because the kind of options that the theme may have, you might not have all of them supported by theme, and then you need to invest in the custom development of the theme. Here, they are saying that I'll give you all of the fixed chart of accounts. I'll give you the fixed numbering schemes for the SKUs. I'll give you the way the GLs are going to be coded across the process boundaries, and you are going to inherit everything the way the template is designed, which is great from the cost perspective. But typically, you are going to be investing a lot because each business is different. each business transaction is different. So any of the customizations are going to be very, very, very expensive. And sometimes the tool may not work because, again, you didn't analyze whether your data codings, the way you do your processes at this point of time, whether that is going to be enough or not. So you have not done that. So that's why you might get issues. So here the pros are going to be, perception of it being inexpensive or cheaper. On the surface, it might be cheaper. It might be faster. Ideal for companies with limited budget. If you don't have budget, you don't have a choice. This could be great. But if you have budget, you can afford the implementation, then go for the better ones. Then the cons is going to be the integration risk, the data translation risk of not going live because the template may not work. So that's going to be a big risk as well. So that's number 9. Now, number 10 on our list is the no go live implementations. And believe it or not, these are very common as well. Okay, the way these implementation types work is you are going to be signing a contract for a software. You are going to be in the implementation for roughly 6 months, a year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years, depending upon how much time you are taking. You are going to be testing a lot, but you would never be able to use the software. Sometimes you are not able to use the software because during the sales demos, they showed the capabilities and you had some implied expectations of how these capabilities are going to work, but the actual capabilities were not as mature as Red. So now they have to customize, develop, enhance, and they are going to be doing all of that. And sometimes it's just misunderstanding, misalignment. And because of that, these things are going to happen and a lot of implementation don't go live. So you are really wasting your time and money regardless of whether you can use your software, and sometimes you are going to be locked in these contracts. So even if you are not able to use the software, you might still have to pay for the licensing fee. So that's a complete waste of money. And if you go live on something that is going to be broken, then you are probably going to be paying a lot more because of business disruptions, and you might have substantial issues overall in your business. The overcommitment and misunderstanding during the sales process is very common. With these, the pros are going to be perception of them being inexpensive or cheaper, being faster. The con is going to be significantly over budget from what you had planned, regardless of whether the over budgeting is going to be during the implementation phase or post implementation. The total waste of time and money and business disruptions is what you are going to expect with these kind of implementations. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed this, then we are going to include the link of a detailed article in the comment below. So check that out. If you prefer an audio format, this podcast is also available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. So you might want to hit subscribe button there. If you have not checked our digital transformation report for 2023, we are going to include the link of that. And if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, we publish these videos on a weekly basis. So if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button. On that note, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.